started, I want to share with you how exciting it was early Thursday morning to go out to be at this race that we sponsored and just see so many people. There were over 100 people there. In reality, it was 101, but in Baptist, the way we say it in the Baptist circles, we say over 100 people. And so I wore this shirt in honor of that great ministry that we will continue. And I also wore this shirt in honor of Alan, because I was firsthand, I saw what happened at the end, and I saw Alan just take off right at the end. He had run hard, sweat. He was barely hanging on. And all of a sudden, he was right next to me, and he just kicked it in a high gear. And I saw what was going on. He saw Shelly in front of him, and he wanted to make sure that he won. He was first in the house, and he just took off. And he went about this fast. And just passed her, and it was just amazing. So we had two winners. Carol's grandson, Alan, winners. And it was just a great thing. So Alan, you inspired me. That was some great, I think, how far did you run actually? I think it was like this. Walk, ran, and then that was it. It was great. I think I actually went faster than you did, but I'm just saying. But it was fun. I enjoyed it immensely, and excited to see how that ministry grows. I have a free week. Next week we'll start our Christmas series. So I had a free week, and I thought, well, with this free week, I'm not in a series. Well, Lord, what would you have me to share? And I really battled with it because there were some other things I wanted to talk about, and God was like, no. And it was actually kind of hard when you have a free week and you really haven't, you're not in a series. And the Lord took me to Judges chapter 6. We're going to do a study on Gideon. And Gideon is one of my favorite characters because maybe of all the characters of the scriptures, Gideon reminds me most of him, and he reminds himself of me. And what we're going to do is we're going to dissect one of the most beautiful conversations between Gideon and the Lord of all the scriptures. And there's so much that we can learn from the story of Gideon in particular. We all know about Gideon and the 300. But what we fail to realize or miss or don't spend a lot of time is the conversation that God had with Gideon before he became this great and mighty champion. Before he became this great and mighty champion, Gideon was not a super champion. He was a super chicken. He was a chicken. He was scared. He was not a leader. He was not a great warrior. In his own eyes, as we're going to find out, he was a nobody. And God called him to be a somebody. And we all can relate to that because the enemy constantly is in pursuit to diminish you and to make you believe that you are a nobody and you have nothing to offer anybody else. And you definitely have nothing to offer God. And so in Judges chapter 6, we're going to read the few verses on to about 10. And that kind of gives a background story of why God called Gideon and what's kind of going on here. So with that, a conversation between Gideon and God is what we're going to take a look at. So, verse 1. And the Israelites did evil. And I want you to, as we go, I really want you to pay attention because this has implications of the conversation between God and Gideon. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelter for themselves in mountain cliffs, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and other eastern people invaded the country. And they camped on the land and ruined all the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkey. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. And they invaded the land and ravished it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. When Israel cried out to the Lord because of Midian, He sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the land of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of your oppressors. And I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you live. But you have not listened to me." And verse 11 begins this conversation. God hearing the cries of His people. He sends a prophet and reminds them why they're here. Verse 11 begins God's ministry again back with His people. Begins a mission for God to find His next leader, His next champion. In verse 11 it says this, "And the angel of the Lord came and sat down under an oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites." There's a picture here of a wine press. It's kind of a long-looking thing that he was using to hide. He was threshing wheat. He was getting wheat and threshing it, and he wanted to make sure that he could not be seen. It's interesting that the next verse, the angel of the Lord, in verse 12, said this, "And the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon and said, 'The Lord is with you, mighty warrior.'" I think it's interesting that he calls Gideon the first time that he talks to him. He says, "Look, you're a mighty warrior." And here you see him hiding. You see him hiding, threshing wheat. He was no warrior. He was no champion. Your scriptures may say mighty man of valor. But if he was a champion, if he was a warrior, he'd have already been leading his people, and they wouldn't have been hiding in the caves. They wouldn't have been hiding in the strongholds. As a matter of fact, if he was a really mighty warrior and champion, God's champion, he wouldn't have been threshing wheat in the winepress. He would have been saying, "Hey, look, I am Gideon. I am God's man, and I'm going to thresh wheat, and if any of y'all want to come after me, be my guest." That's who I would presume would be God's champion. That's who I would presume when God says, "You are a mighty warrior, you're a mighty man of valor." But you see him hiding in the winepress. And so this conversation begins where the Lord sets the tone of what He's truly after. And then in a beautiful way, just really brings Gideon along for the ride. In verse 12, Gideon responds, probably for the first time ever, as he was told he was a mighty champion, he was a mighty warrior, he's a mighty man of valor. And he responds by saying this, "Pardon me, my Lord," lower L. Gideon replied, "But if the Lord," upper L, "is with us, why has all this happened? Where are all His wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and has given us into the hand of the Midianites." That right there is why we went and started at the beginning of the chapter. That right there where it says that they ran away from God. They did their own thing. He told them, "I want you to obey, and I don't want you to follow after the gods of the Midianites." Obviously they did. And He knew it. And so he says, look, pardon me, but I want to tell you, the God that brought us out of Egypt, he abandoned us. The verse 11 verses states that no, they abandoned him. They abandoned him. They walked away. Now, when I was first reading this, when I was first studying this, I thought, Gideon, if you really only knew who you were talking to, if you really only knew that this is Jehovah God, this is the God of the universe, and nobody talks to him that way. And I'm reading here and I just stop and I'm like, oh my gosh, how is God going to respond? How is he going to respond? And by the way, this doesn't sound like a future leader to me. So the question is, how did God respond to Gideon? Verse 14, here's how he responds. The Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of the Midian's hands. Am I not sending you? So anticlimactic. I thought, man, here it comes. All of heaven. Whew. He doesn't even address it. He doesn't even address being indicted by Gideon about how he had abandoned his own people. He doesn't even address it. And I thought, well, God, why did you not address it? Why didn't your fury come down? And he said, go in your own strength, Gideon, and save the Israelites. Have I not set you? Here's what's going on. I'm going to give you a little clue. It's a setup. God is setting him up for the real conversation, for the real reason that he was having this conversation. God was not going to sit there and banter. He doesn't have to answer anybody's questions. He doesn't have to validate. And by the way, when the world starts talking about God, that doesn't mean anything to him. If he wants to stand up and show that he is God, as he has done many times in the Old Testament, he will. But right here and there, that didn't mean anything to him. He was setting Gideon up for the real conversation. What we see here is the Lord setting Gideon up for a real discussion. You go in your own strength, Gideon. You want to stand, you want to say that's all God, well, why don't you go in your strength? In verse 15 it says this, pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. So God really begins to turn the table and says, look, I want you to go do it. I want you to go. Come on, go do it. He said, no, I can't. I can't. And as a matter of fact, you know how a lot of times we all have some inefficiencies. We all battle with self-doubt, and we all battle with all these things. And by the way, the enemy just kind of makes it bigger and bigger in our lives, and we all battle these. And it's one thing to think it. It's a whole nother matter to say it out loud. And even a whole nother matter when you say it to somebody that you don't even know. And here you have Gideon say, I can't do it. And they shift. All of a sudden, it's not about blaming anymore. It's not about any of these other things. It's that God called him out and said, look, I want you to lead. I want you to fight. I'm calling you. And he says, look, I can't do it. I'm the weakest of the weak. You've got the wrong guy. You've got the wrong guy. See, the real issue here was how Gideon saw himself through his own eyes. He viewed himself as a loser and no one of importance. He was a nobody. And that's how he sees himself. There are a lot of us here in this room that see themselves that way. Well, I've got a few little things, but I can never be used by God. I can never serve. I've got no gifts. I've got no talents. You know what? You want to know why this thing's starting to restrict me? You want to know why I relate so good to him? Because that was me. I fell for a lie a long, long time ago. I wasn't a great student. I wasn't a great son. I made major mistakes in my life. And I had the enemy whispering in my ear, shouting in my ear, "You're nobody, Joe. You're a loser. You can't even pass high school, Joe. You're not a good son. You're the first son, and you can't do anything." And I remember as I got older and I met this lovely woman, and she helped me to begin to grow and to think that maybe, just maybe, if God can give me a woman like her, maybe I have some type of worth. And I remember at the age of 18, 19, I was battling in my mind that I have a father-in-law that's the pastor of the church. I have a great wife that's strong and courageous and smart. And who am I? Where can I fit? Where can I serve? I can't serve there because I can't do this. I can't serve there because I have no leadership skills. I can't do that. I can't even speak. I don't even want to come forward and pray. Please, my father-in-law would call me all the time. I'm like, "Please don't call me to pray. Please don't call me to pray." And he would do it over and over and over again. So much so that I had one rehearsed. So when that time came, I pulled it out of my back pocket and I'm like, "Remember." But that's me. That was my life for years. Nobody was telling me that. Nobody was telling me I was a loser. Nobody told me that I was a nobody. I had a wife that loved me, that was encouraging me. I had a mom that was praying for me, that loved me and was encouraging me. I had a father-in-law that was pouring into me. And all I had was love, but yet I felt like I had nothing. I felt like I was a nobody, and I can't contribute. So where does that come from? Am I alone? We all have these areas in our lives that we just get hammered and hammered. And I was listening to the wrong voices. Ever feel that way, Stoney?
Yeah.
Ever feel that way? By the way, I still feel that way. I still hear those voices. Those voices will never, ever stop. But we can combat those voices. We can combat it. So I'm here to tell you this. I'm going to stop. I'm going to move away. I have a word for you. You are somebody. You are loved. And you have great talent. You have great skills. And you say, "Well, you don't understand me." No, but I understand God. And He is the great giver of gifts and talents and courage and strengths and abilities. And the only thing I ever did right was this: God, I want to serve you. I have got nothing to give. And I believe that. I believe that with my whole heart. That I had nothing to offer God that was great except effort. So God, I've got no skill. I'm not very smart. I'm kind of just a little bit below average in everything that I do. But I tell you what, I'm starting to believe the Bible and how you use people that were insufficient. And maybe, just maybe, you can use me. Maybe, just maybe, you can use me. And from that point on, my life has changed. Why? Because now I don't look at my own gifts and abilities. I look at His strength and His courage and His power and His love. And I said yes to everything and anything that He said to go and do. And I've learned through the years. And now my power comes through His Word, through prayer, and through the experiences of seeing Him work in and through me throughout the years. And so I don't trust my own strength. I don't trust my own wisdom. I trust Him. And He deserves nothing less. So when you say that I can't, you're actually saying that He can't. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I don't believe in the calling that you're calling me to. I don't believe that you can do anything through me. That's what you're saying. Is that what you want to say? And by the way, God's going to call you to do things that are above your capabilities. He's not going to call you to do something that you know you can do, because then you don't need Him. He's going to call you to do something that's above your capabilities, that's beyond your reach. And He's going to want you to stretch for it. He's going to want you to lean on Him so He can show Himself through you. That's what He's doing with His church. You may say, well, we're just a small Baptist church. We just want to do our Sunday thing. No, that's not what He's calling this church to do. I was going to say, because if He did, I wouldn't be here. But we're past that point now. Because we're all in this together. And I'm here to tell you, God is not okay with just having a same old, same old. Not in this church, and by the way, not in your life. You growing? You changing? You saying yes to His calling? Let me ask you this. Are you even listening? Or have you been doing something for so long, it's just become routine, and you don't need His power anymore? That's something that I have to check over and over and over again, because I can make ministry into a profession. I know the lingo. I know the talk. I can pray a prayer. I can preach a sermon. But if I don't do that stuff through His power, it's just empty time. And so God is always going to be challenging us to go bigger, to do more, so we can grow in our faith. And we have to be careful that we, as professional churchgoers or professional teachers or someone in ministry, that we just don't get bogged down in the routine. And then we get dry and stale. And then we're kind of just going through the motions. We don't want to go through the motions. There are many, many churches going through the motions, and they're not being a difference maker in their community. We want to be a difference maker in our community, in our homes, in our churches. We want to do some great things for the Lord. He deserves nothing less. And God is calling Gideon to be His leader, to be His champion. And Gideon is saying, you called the wrong guy. I tell you what, I'm the least, I'm the littlest, I've got nothing to offer, but there's this guy over here and this guy over there. It doesn't say it, but I bet you he was thinking it. How about my brother? How about my this one? How about my even sister? My sister has more to offer than I do. Not me. Not me. Please not me. Please not me. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The real issue here was how Gideon saw himself through his own eyes. How do you see yourself through your own eyes? He viewed himself as a loser and no one of importance. I'm a nobody. I'm worthless. And by the way, in Romans 8:1, it says this, therefore there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. You know why that verse is important? Because those things that you're hearing in your ears, in your soul, in your body, in your mind, that's not coming from God. That's coming from the enemy. And the enemy is going to be ringing in your ears, and he's going to be saying things like, hey, look, you're not a good father. You're not a good grandfather. You're not a good mother. You're not a good Christian. How can you be teaching Bible study classes when you did this last week? How can you be teaching this when you did that? Here you are, you've been married almost 25 years, and you're still a loser of a husband. I'm telling you, these things will never end. And the enemy will condemn you and condemn you and condemn you and condemn you, because his goal is to take you off your feet, put you in a corner, and put his foot on your neck and keep you there where you're believing all his lies. But see, that's why it's important for Romans chapter 8, verse 1. God does not condemn his children. That's not his voice. He's the one saying, hey, look, you can do it. Hey, look, use my power. Use your strength. Look, I'm the one who called you to do these things. If I called you, I'm going to equip you. I want you to get up. I want you to be my champion. I want you to serve. I want you to help others. Yes, you can't do it in your strength, but you can do it in mine. Trust me. Verse 16. So this is after he had his little pity party. So good. This is so good. And the Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive. When I read that, if we're not careful, we will miss great statements in the scriptures. First time I read that, I didn't get it. Second time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember telling Pam, he said he's going to be be with them. He's going to be with them. And like, well, God's always going to be with you. But then it was like, no. What's he saying? He's saying this. God of the universe is saying to Gideon, take my hand in yours and let's live life together. Let's live life together. That's what he's saying. Take my hand in yours. And with me, when we're together, we're linked, I'm going to be with you. And you're going to win. You're going to be successful. You're not hopeless. You have hope in me. My strength. Your effort. That was so revolutionizing to me when I realized that I don't have to try to do this. He's like, he's going to be with me. And if he was with Gideon, he's going to be with me. And that's no joke. That's what was going on in my heart and my mind when I read this. Because I knew the things that God was already calling me to do. I knew, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a bumpy ride. And guess what? It has been bumpy. But we've plowed through. Why? Because he's the muscle. And he is the strength. And I'm just going along with the ride. He is our strength. I remember I was playing baseball with Joseph. And at that time, he was probably like 3 or 4. And I got that little plastic little ball, what do you call it, with the holes in it? Wiffle ball. He's got that plastic bat, that long plastic bat. And I'm throwing him the ball, and he's taking that, and he's swinging, he's missing. And then you take that bat, he says, let's do it again. And he take that bat, and bam, 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 bam. You know how those little kids, they just hit that ground. They feel if you hit the ground harder, you're going to hit the ball harder. And he hit that ground and swing and a miss. Swing and a miss. And I'm taking that ball, and I'm just trying so hard to make it perfect. Swing and a miss. So I asked Susan, Pam's mom, his grandmother, to come in to toss him the ball. I said, you toss him the ball. And I came over to Joseph. And now he's like this. Then he was like this. And I came over, and I reached over, and I put my hands in his hands, and I grabbed hold of the bat on top of his hands, and my big body was over his little body. And I looked at his grandma, and I said, go ahead and pitch the ball. And together we took the bat. Boom. Boom. He hit the ball. Boom. Every time. Boom. Why? Because Big Daddy was there. Big Daddy loved his son. And he asked him to hit the ball. He couldn't do it on his own. And I came in with loving arms and gave him what he needed to be successful. The God of the universe will wrap his loving arms around you. And when he asks you to do something in particular, to serve him that's above your capabilities, to do things that you can't do, he will wrap his loving arms around you and provide the resources and the strength and the ability to get that which he has called you to do done. And when you're thinking about your insufficiencies, you think about his power and his love for his children. That's what Gideon was starting to feel. That's what was going on. He's like, look, Gideon, I will be with you. You don't know this yet, but I'm going to call you to do some extraordinary things. And I know where you are. You see, God knew where he was at. He knew what he was going to call him to do. He understood where he was, how he thought about himself. And the God in the universe, I don't want you to miss this, the God in the universe loved him so much that he said, look, I know where you're at. And I'm going to gently begin to mold you into the man that I want you to be. Because I'm not going to call you to something that you're just not really ready for yet. I'm going to bring you to that point. But when that point comes, I want you to step forward. So God is saying, I want to live life together with you, Gideon. My strength and your effort. And then Gideon reply. I love the way that goes back and forth. Verse 17, Gideon replies and says this, if now I have found favor in your eyes, Give me a sign that it's really you that's talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. What are you seeing here? A man that was hopeless now finding hope. A man that probably thought, nobody believes in me. I don't even believe in myself. Now is talking to the God of the universe, and he believes in him. And hope is coming, and he's getting excited. And he says, look, I want to have an offering. And he's like this, please don't go. He's loving this conversation. He's like, for the first time ever, somebody's expressing interest in me. And I want to honor you right now. Please don't go. And this is what God says. It's great. Pam remembers, I was reading this in the car and I had a hallelujah fit. It says this, please don't go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, I will wait until you return. Man, that struck me. Even right now, I'm just holding back the tears. The God of the universe said, look, Gideon, maybe other people have left you. Maybe other people have talked down to you. Maybe other people have never taken you seriously. But yeah, I'm the God of the universe. And I've got little things I need to do. But I want to let you know something. I'll wait all day long until you come back. Gideon, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the long haul. We have a real relationship. And I want you to know that. Yes, I'm the God of the universe. And yes, I don't need to be waiting. But I'm going to wait for you, Gideon. I'll grab a bottle of water and sip on it until you come back. That wasn't even planned. How cool was that? I'm going to wait. That's the God that we serve. He's going to wait on us. He's going to help us. He's going to guide us. He's going to love us. And when we're insecure, He's going to lead us with kid gloves on. That's the God that we serve. I love that. That my God will wait on me until I'm ready. We have a God that is patient with us, loving towards us, and loves us. So after he's waiting, he goes and he gets, I'm going to kind of paraphrase a little bit. He goes and he gets his offering, he builds, and God consumes the fire, and he's like, oh, this is it. He consumed the fire. It is God who I'm talking about. It's me. God's talking to me. And then God gives him a small little test. And he's like, look, I want you to build me an altar. As a matter of fact, I want you to tear down Baal's altar. That's what I want you to do. I've got some big things in store, but let's just do some little steps here. So he waits till nighttime when everybody's asleep. And he goes and he tears down Baal's altar, and he does a new altar for the Lord. And does God ever say anything to him about that? No. He doesn't. And the people wake up and they're after Gideon, and he's like, I'm not sure what to do. And his dad comes in and he kind of intervenes and he works things out. And Gideon's like, all right, I passed the test. I didn't die, which God said he wouldn't die. But he did it at nighttime, but God was okay with it. Why? Because he knew where Gideon was when he first started this conversation with him. He understood. As a matter of fact, what I'm getting ready to read to you even validates that even further. Listen what happens. So this is continue on in verse 36. This is after that night and everything. And Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hands, as you said. So now the test is going back to God. Now remember, he already saw him consume his offering. But he's like, I just need to make sure. I wonder what God says. I'm like, oh, Gideon, you're right, I picked the wrong guy. Verse 38, and that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day, and he squeezed the fleece and wrung out with dew a bowl full of water. Now he's ready, right? God just answered him. I mean, God didn't have to. He was like, look, I know where you're at. It's okay. Verse 39, he's ready to go. Then Gideon said to God, don't be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. Even Gideon was angry at himself. He said, I know you're going to be angry. Please don't be angry. I'm angry with myself. I can't believe I'm doing this. But please, but this time, make the fleece dry and the ground be covered with dew. Verse 40. That night, God did so. I circled that in my note because that's so powerful. God did so. He didn't ask questions. He didn't shake his head. For the second time, he just did it. When I'm reading that, I'm like, oh, God, how good are you? How good are you? Why? Because it wasn't about God. It was about taking his champion and helping him, just growing in his faith, growing in his courage. We talk about courage a lot because really, in the life that we live today, it takes courage to be a Christian. It takes courage to stand. It takes courage to step forward when you're the only one stepping forward. It takes courage to say yes to what God is calling us to do. It takes courage. But God also understands that it's a tough life. He understands that we battle fear. He understands that we have an enemy and we collide every single day with the world and what we know to be true. He knows that. But see, what happens is we get skewed theology. We're like, oh, God's disappointed me.